Well, good morning, everyone. My name's Wendell. I'll be your escort over to the visitors complex. As we go over there, it's going to be a great morning for a launch. Because if it don't go, I don't go on my vacation. And I'm going on a 7-day cruise. So I'm just sitting here going like this, hoping it goes.
Now the seat they get into, the way the shuttle is oriented, the seats are like you're sitting right now for landing, because it lands like... at T0, and then they count on up their days from that point. And so they'll have a schedule, 24-hour schedule, that they'll have 8 hours for sleep, time for 3 meals and exercise, and most of the rest of the time they'll be working on the experiments, the work that they're supposed to be doing on this mission. This crew is operating in a 2-shift operation, so they'll be 12 hours on, 12 hours off. So a few hours after they get up there, half the crew will go to sleep, and the other half will continue getting the orbiter ready and start into the experiments, and then 12 hours later they'll shift over to or less than that, because the first crew will have to get into bed too. But then they'll be on a 12-hour shift program. What I'd like to do now is answer any questions that you folks have, and then we can you can get they have to go to avoid dropping the boosters. That's one of the more, even if they look at more, so the boosters don't drop in time. So that's what they say. So you see the space station missions, they'll even rotate a little bit more and a little bit further more. The limit we have, our first flight out of here, STS-107.
given to us on the bus this morning of the 4 upcoming launches. I noticed today's launch has a window of 2 hours and 30 some odd minutes, and the subsequent launches have a launch window of only 5 to 10 minutes. What is that difference?
Yeah, I explained that at the beginning, but I'll redo it for those who are latecomers here, because look at a lot more people than were here braving the cold weather a half hour ago. The reason is all those other missions are going to join up with the space station. Okay, and the space station is in orbit, and that orbit is actually an inertial orbit. It's not around, has nothing to do with the surface of the Earth. The space station doesn't know where anything on the surface is. It knows where the center of gravity is. So it's in an orbit around the center of the Earth, if you will. So it's just up there in space going around this. Now we happen to be down on the surface, and we're spinning around also. We're going around once every 24 hours. They're going around once every 90 minutes. So we're here on the Cape. This is kind of hard to do. Yeah, Paul, if you'd hold that. If this is the Earth and we're rotating around and the shuttle, or the station rather, is in this inertial orbit, and let's say my wedding ring is where we are, we have to wait until until the launch site comes underneath the orbit of the space station. And that's when we launch. And 5 minutes later, it's not going to be under it. Actually, it's only under it at one instant in time, but the shuttle has enough reserve fuel, it can change its orbit as it's going up a little bit. It can kind of slide over a little bit one way or the other to catch up to get into the orbit of the station. But 5 minutes is about it. And we don't have enough fuel to make any bigger changes than that. So that's why it's limited to 5 minutes. Thanks, Paul. Today's mission is not going to join up with anybody up there, so it's free to go up. It doesn't care where the Earth is when it's rotating around, so it can. The 2.5 hours is basically, that's about as long as you want to leave the crew up there lying on their back in addition to what they are before launch. Okay, and so that's why it's limited. The 2.5 hours is an arbitrary time based on crew. You don't want the crew to be exhausted during the launch, and certainly when they get up there as well. Okay. Okay, I think we're going to close now. I'm going to do another one of these at 7:30 for those who want to come around and do that. I'm also available if you'd like to take pictures with me. Paul can work that. We'll be glad to do that as well for those who'd like to. You guys have a great day. Enjoy the launch. Enjoy the
Ladies and gentlemen, astronaut Guy Gardner.
Thank you. God bless you. Thanks.
Yeah, they're still in there.
It's 25 back on the clock on the phone too.
Got a seat? Okay. And 4.
All the exhibits are going
Let's see where they want us to go.
Crew hatch. And this will be done once all the astronauts are in and all their comm checks are complete. Make sure there are no troubles before they close the hatch. That's correct, you got Mr. 748 to 551, where do you stand on that? Through 551 are to be completed after the drivers are turned on. Right, copy that. That's process now.
I will, alright. Figure out how I'm going to get up.
This mission will be carrying Space Shuttle Research Double Module, and it will be making its first flight on mission STS-107. The double module is a pressurized aluminum habitat that is carried in the Space Shuttle's cargo bay to expand the working space aboard the shuttle.
And then they move it all the way up very slowly. Taking a picture. And I said, I haven't been back. And I said, I didn't know I could bring them. I was thinking when it gets close to time, maybe I should call Susan. Let her hear it.
Just sort of stuck because
I wouldn't hold the phone. I just thought it was
Yeah, I'm saving film on my camera to take pictures of crowds. Should be fun.
basically, I can see it better.
Good morning, Mike. Houston has your loud and clear. Go on. Boys, have your loud and clear.
It's too damp or something. Inside there is that other bag, that other blanket.
Here's ASCOM 636.
Really? Did they talk about that? Did they?
no,
It must.
if they get too
Birds get scared to death.
they keep birds
OTC
afraid.
asked, all non-flight items are removed from the crew module. I'm ready to pull the fuel cell PCM circuit breaker and terminate comms. Okay, copy that. 2059.
It's not like they'll get in the engine.
And ASCOM Egon 019.
They get burned up right.
Did he say?
No,
Did he
there
say
are.
there were alligators?
Oh, there are. There's 5,000 of them on the.
We saw some eyes.
More predators.
And OTC, OBTC.
Yeah, no, I
Yes, sir. We're starting on
tour
port
before the guy
7
actually
We're closing the
stopped
heads
the
now.
bus. Maybe on the way back. For alligators.
And we are on the crew module. Okay, copy that.
Turkeys and black-headed vultures, great herons, ospreys,
Right, ospreys.
red tails. Learn a few life skills.
Standing?
Yes.
Waiting, queuing.
Waiting, queuing, being patient, being pleasant and nice to people.
Being mad.
No, it's true.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Believe it or not, it's hard to find.
I have a padded seat. I just can't remember what's in my pocket.
Miles above the earth, and you find 79 degrees.
They get a good exposure to life in the
Will go to
space.
work shortly after the shuttle's payload bay doors are open,
Tempers their
activating
PD
space
now.
nav and scientific systems and unstowing gear.
Well, I don't have it.
The blue team, pilot
Oh, well.
payload commander Mike Anderson and mission specialist Dave Brown
And there was a
will
lot of
begin an
discussion
abbreviated
about
6-hour
how
sleep
good this
period
would be
just
when they
after
got here
1:30
because
p.m. Central Time.
just
As
realized
dual ship scientific
Not
operations
American.
get underway in earnest. Under the
No,
watch of the
you're
red team,
doing
Commander
this.
Rick Husband,
It's much better.
Colton Chavla, Laurel Clark, and payload specialist Yolanda Malone.
last night you
By the
stay
way,
up
at the time of
until 9
Columbia's
o'clock,
launch,
you
the
get
International
home at
Space
10.
Station and the
And
Expedition
then you
crew
tell
of
them to get
Commander
up at
Ken
3 in the
Sauerstein, Flight
morning.
Engineer Nikolai Budarin, and ISS. And we have a go for aging new start. The auxiliary power unit activation has been reported.
Okay. Here we are. Pilot starts auxiliary power unit.
That's the fuel cells now. They have their own electricity. They used to be run. Before that, they run from electricity from the ground.
Like the
Cut
airplane.
that off. Now they're running off of electricity inside of
The
it.
objective of this shuttle mission is to conduct extensive scientific research and experimentation in space from the Space Hab double module. Complete treated ATS.
Your kid who's been here before said all the fish jump out of the water when the shock wave comes across. That'd be awesome.
That'll be cool.
I'm going to put you down for now.
I think a bus driver mentioned that too.
T-minus 4 minutes and counting.
We're interested in
Final test of the flight control surfaces is now being conducted. This is a programmed pattern of movements designed to verify the readiness of the launch vehicles of the launch engine and other flight control systems.
I could see if you're here. T-minus now.
Go squat right here.
Come over here.
Honey, go squat right here. Go kneel.
Go ahead.
All right. Thank you.
T-minus 3 minutes, 25 seconds and counting.
room for everybody.
Final aero surface checks of the orbiter's wing ailerons and rudder are being completed at this time.
Try not to breathe, huh?
This verifies the orbiter's
Yeah,
hydraulic
it's
system.
a hard, steady shot.
And next we'll see the three main engines, the gimbal,
Oh, that should show up on your camera if you're really good.
It's a tight zoom.
T-minus 3 minutes and counting. Everything is looking good for launch this morning. All systems on board Columbia are operating with no problems reported. And the gas via oxygen vent hood will be slowly retracted away from the top of the external tank.
Israeli astronauts
They're gonna.
were hired in '96 for this.
They're moving the. They're moving the thing off the top.
You're using God's given tripod.
Don't cry, Mom.
This is awesome.
Columbia, for flight crew, close your launch advisors and initiate a reflow. T-minus 2 minutes to count.
Okay, let's go.
When he starts the live now, you remember last with the mini
CBSDS, no hold, no LTC, RS clicks, we're adhering to redundant switch and an active test. Okay, we copy. STE copy? And you're still go. T-minus 1 minute, 30 seconds, and counting. Pre-planned and electrical code to 80 now.
1 minute, 30 seconds.
90 seconds.
The liquid hydrogen tank inside the external tank is reported to be at the proper flight pressure.
Yes.
I want a picture first.
Bird.
T-minus 1 minute and counting. The booster joint heaters are being deactivated at this time. And all continues to look good for launch of Shuttle Columbia from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And we're coming up on a go for our auto sequence start. And we have a go for auto sequence start. Columbia's onboard computers have primary control of all the vehicle's critical functions. T-minus 20 seconds and counting.
Seconds.
15 seconds. 11, 10, 9,
8,
7,
7,
we have a go for
6,
ignition start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia with a multitude of national and international space research experiments. Houston now controlling the flight of Columbia, the international research mission finally underway. Roger, roll, Columbia. Columbia now rolling on to the proper azimuth for a 39-degree inclination to orbit. Shuttle on a head-down wing level position for the 8.5-minute ride to orbit.
You feel that?
Bye.
We're gonna watch
30 seconds into the flight, the 3 liquid fuel main engines beginning to throttle back in a 3-step fashion. 72% of rated performance, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it breaks through the sound barrier.
Oh my God, the ground. Oh my God. He's so scared. Oh my God!
Terminal calling knowledge by Commander Rick Hudson, Dr. Untitled by Pilot William School, Flight Engineer Tony Chopra, Mission Specialist Dave Brown, Mission Specialist Laurel Clark, Payload Commander Mike Anderson, and Payload Specialist Yvonne Ramon seated down on the middeck. 1 minute, 26 seconds into the flight. Columbia 10 miles downrange, 13 miles in altitude, traveling at 1,800 miles an hour.
1,800 miles an hour. Wow. I can't believe I just saw that. And you imagine how those faces were like, God.
Get out of the way, Cloud.
Away from solid rocket booster separation, everything looking good on board Columbia.
Rocket booster separation.
See the white out comes down. That's the
Look,
rocket
Alice,
coming
it's
down.
way up there.
Man, they go 4 miles per second.
Unbelievable.
See,
They're like 10 miles.
Soon the pulse rockets are going to go. They go 4 miles
see the
per
rocket
second.
boosters. They already did.
That's bad. Yeah, it's gonna fall instead.
Yeah.
Did you see them? Hello, did you see them?
Look at you guys. That is unbelievable.
Solid rocket booster separation confirmed. Guidance now converging. Columbia's onboard computers commanding the main engine nozzle to gently swivel, aiming the shuttle for a precise target in space where main engine
You can still see it.
Columbia now 43 miles downrange, 35 miles in altitude, traveling 3,200 miles an hour. The propulsion officer at Mission Control reporting that the orbital maneuvering system engines have ignited, providing Columbia with a boost uphill for the next 90 seconds.
Oh, look, that's the spaceship.
We won't. I'm going to be so proud of these photos. Let me tell you what. That is unbelievable.
Everything aboard Columbia, great shape, pretty good main engine, pretty good auxiliary power units, pretty good fuel fill.
Yeah, that's it.
Look, it's snowing. It's a snowflake.
It's really starting to move out now.
However, all 3 main engines functioning by the book. Columbia 85 miles downrange, 50 miles at altitude, traveling almost 4,000 miles an hour. Columbia's 3 main engines draining a half a ton of fuel per second from the shuttle's large external fuel tank. Those 3 main engines operate normally. Columbia heading towards the station on the first shuttle mission of the year.
It's right there.
Picture perfect.
Are you serious?
Yeah, you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Now I see it.
That's like a
I do. There's like a little
Coming up on the point of negative return, the shuttle will be too far downrange, too high in altitude, to return to the launch site in the event of an engine failure.
Yeah, you're right. See, it's kind of feathering down a little bit, but I do find very
More crowd pictures.
So we got the negative return. 4 minutes into the flight, Columbia already 147 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, 62 miles in altitude, traveling more than 5,000 miles an hour, on course and on time for its orbit, 150 nautical miles above the Earth.
The one that's coming down is going to behind there. Which cloud?
We're going to see that stuff.
The one that's the V-shape. No, the one behind.
Yes, and once you watch it,
All quiet here in the flight control room. 4.5 minutes into the flight, Columbia 200 miles downrange, traveling almost 6,000 miles an hour, 57 miles in altitude, everything looking very good on board.
We're going to bed early. The water got splat. Yeah, but bed early. It's gonna splash.
Not bad.
What are we doing now?
You want to get ahead?
And the ride.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, we're gonna get her back.
Document space programs, Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo. My name is Wally Schirra. After growing up in Orlando, Florida, I headed north and graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in aeronautical engineering. There are 4 enormous high bays, and 2 of those are used for assembly operations. On the side of the transfer aisle in the high bays are work platforms that raise from the floor all the...
Look at that beautiful American flag painted on the southwest corner of the building in 1976 to celebrate our country's bicentennial. It took approximately 600 gallons of paint, and it is the largest hand-painted American flag in the world. It measures 110 feet wide, 209 feet long. Those 13 red and white stripes are 8.5 feet wide. Those 50 stars measure 6 feet from tip to tip. And the blue union behind those stars, well, it's just about the exact same size as an NBA basketball court. White ibis to the right. The white ibis has white plumage, red decurved beak, red legs, and beautiful blue eyes. white ibis. Also have glossy ibis, commonly seen out here at the Space Center. One of those three buildings where it's refurbished and made ready for another launch. Now they can use those orbiters on 100 different launches before they need a major overhaul. All kind of things. That's a shuttle landing facility, SLF, shuttle landing facility. And that's one of the longest and widest concrete landing strips in the world.
Please continue to move all the way into the theater, away from the doors. You will need to see the 3 screens. Just go.
When I was a kid, I used to dream about flying through space. Every week on TV, I'd watch my heroes as they jumped into their rocket ships and they took to the stars. And I wanted to be like them. They had courage, imagination, and no problem ever stood in their way for long. You know, in the end, when we actually did send men into space, it turned out that those were exactly the qualities it took. I'm John Hudson. This is Pad 39 of the Kennedy Space Center. I was a launch controller here when from this very spot, man took off to fly to the moon. It was a journey that began 12 years before that rocket ever left the ground. And it started on the other side of the world. Back then, we were one of 2 superpowers that always seemed to be on the edge of a terrible war. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched the first ever man-made satellite into Earth orbit. They called it Sputnik, which means traveling companion. And in a world where peace hung in a delicate balance, it seemed to create a dangerous advantage. Every ham radio operator in America could hear it beeping. People were afraid. Were the Soviets looking down on us, watching us? If they could make a satellite pass over our cities, could they do the same with a bomb? Our own space program kicked into high gear, and less than 2 months later, we were ready to launch our own satellite, Explorer 1. It was being called the Space Race, and we were running a distant second. In 1961, we fell even further behind. Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first man into space, circling the world in just 89 minutes. We had our own astronauts, and they were eager and ready to take the big ride. But our manned space program couldn't seem to get off the ground. We stuck with it, and on May 5th, 1961, things finally started going right. Astronaut Alan Shepard took his ship Freedom 7 6.5 miles into space. America had its first space hero. Just a few days later, our space program received a new challenge. But this one did not come from the Soviet Union. It came from our young president. In one inspiring moment, he changed the mission from one based in fear of the present to one of hope for the future.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
We hadn't been more than 16 minutes into space, and now we were going to the moon. We would have to design a rocket the size of a 36-story office building, put it together with the precision of a microscope, and accelerate it to the speed of the moon. Then we would have to guide it to a moving target 250,000 miles away. Many people thought it was an impossible dream, but 400,000 of us set about making that dream a reality. It would be the longest, most hazardous voyage that any man had dared to attempt. But step by step, mission by mission, we orbited the Earth, perfecting the skills and technologies we would need on this incredible journey. Our astronauts practiced maneuvering, docking, and the 1,000 other tasks that would comprise the moon mission. We created new alloys, lighter and stronger than anything seen before. We designed communication systems that would be reliable over the vast distances. And behind it all, we tried to perfect the rocket that would be powerful enough to punch out of Earth orbit and take us to the moon. One day, however, the dream of flying to the moon almost slipped away. It was January 27th, 1967. Astronauts Virgil Gus Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee were on board Apollo 1 for a plugs-out test, a full-scale dress rehearsal for the actual launch. Suddenly it happened. There was a fire in the capsule. 3 men whose lives had been in our hands were lost.
Surely the opening vistas of space promise high costs and hardships, as well as high reward. But this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them.
After Apollo 1, some thought we'd failed, and that the moon was out of our reach. But we owed it to those men to learn from their sacrifice and to carry on. We started taking the Apollo vehicle apart, piece by piece. Was the design flawed? Had safety been compromised? Tough questions. And we spent 1.5 years redesigning the spacecraft so that no astronaut's life would ever be at risk because we overlooked something or because we could have done something better. A moon rocket is 91% high explosive, and it goes into the most unforgiving, hazardous environment there is. We could never make it risk-free, and the men who flew them knew that. We didn't send men into space again until Apollo 7 orbited the Earth testing some of the new designs. When everything worked perfectly, the decision was made. The next mission would travel to the moon. It was mankind's destiny to leave the shores of our planet behind and strike out across the vast ocean of space. In the great span of our history, now was the time that we could. Now was the time that we would. We stood on the eve of the longest, most dangerous journey that any man had ever undertaken. And it would be taken by Frank Borman, James Lovell, and William Anders, the crew of Apollo 8. Through those doors, you'll find the firing room, launch control, just as it was on December 21st, 1968.
As you enter the firing room, please watch your step on the stairs and use the handrails. All stroller and wheelchair guests, please use it.
Take.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Firing Room Theater. My name is Kevin. If you need to exit at any time during the show, exit to the doors on the right. We do ask that during the presentation, as a courtesy to others, that there be no smoking or flash photography. Thank you.
This is the firing room. Launch control for the Apollo mission. This is not a mock-up. These are the very consoles we sat at when men first took off to fly to the moon. The tragedy of Apollo 1 had put us 1.5 years behind. We were making up for it in one big leap. And we were doing it with a rocket that no man had ever flown before. It was a few days before Christmas, 1968, when Apollo 8 sat on the pad. She was the first of a new kind, a moon rocket. This was the Phoenix, risen from the ashes of Apollo 1. The first Apollo crew did not do it in vain. This was to be their testament. "36 stories high, she had been fully fueled throughout the night. The liquid oxygen in her tanks caused ice to form on the outside of the craft. The extreme temperature differences between the air and the sub-zero fuel caused the metal skin of the rocket to expand and contract. Everyone who was on the pad agreed. It was as though the rocket was alive, breathing, straining its leash. Earlier in the morning, astronauts Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders had made their final preparations before taking that long ride out to the waiting spacecraft. The minimum safe distance from Saturn V to liftoff was 3 miles. The reason was simple. When fully fueled, the rocket contained the explosive power of an atomic bomb. As the clock counted down, the astronauts and all of us in launch control went through the pre-flight checks. Our hands on the controls of the most powerful, most complex machine ever built. It had over 2 million separate systems. And to bring these men back alive, everything had to work perfectly. Each individual system had been tested, but what we didn't know was how they would perform when all 2 million began to work together. That moment happened when the countdown clock reached 0. If a maneuvering thruster failed, if communications broke down, if navigation was off by 1 degree, if any piece of the miles of wiring, circuits, relays, or valves was defective, Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders would pay with their lives. As they sat, waiting for launch on that chill December morning, these 3 astronauts were back to what they had always been, test pilots. You are now in the final minutes before the launch of Apollo 8, right here where it actually happened. Mankind is about to leave his planet behind and journey to another. It is one of those rare moments when history is not being made, destiny is being embraced.
This is launch control. T-minus 3 minutes and counting. We have completed our communications checks with the Apollo 8 astronauts in the cabin, and the communications are go. During this period, once we do get the firing command, the various tanks within the 3 stages of the Saturn V launch vehicle begin to pressurize. We have firing command. The firing command is in. We are now on the automatic sequence. T-minus 2 minutes, 20 seconds. Our status board indicates that all aspects are ready. Instrument unit is ready. Spacecraft ready. Final check of the emergency detection system. That ready like also now. First stage preparations are completed. liquid oxygen tank has been pressurized, and the pressure is still building up. Coming up on 90 seconds, mark, T-minus 90 seconds incoming. The Apollo 8 crew standing by, spacecraft Commander Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, Bill Anders. We now have a report that the liquid hydrogen tank on the third stage is pressurized, 1 minute 15 seconds. All third stage propellants pressurized at this time as we come up on the 60-second mark on the flight to the moon. 60 seconds and counting. The vehicle now is completely pressurized. We're coming up on a power transfer shortly. We have the power transfer. We're now on the flight batteries within the launch vehicle. Final reports coming from Frank Borman at this time. Final look at the switch list aboard the spacecraft. 20 seconds, all aspects. We are still in go at this time. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence. The engines are on. 4.
Apollo 8 successfully orbited the moon, and the astronauts returned safely to the Earth. I know. I'm Jim Lovell, and I was one of the crew of this spacecraft, Apollo 8. We were the first men to see the surface of the moon from just a few miles away. But it was the hundreds of thousands of men and women who worked in that team, and the millions of people who supported the mission that really made it possible. That way, I guess, we all went to the moon. Now, on the other side of those doors, you'll find an actual Saturn V moon rocket. It's still the most powerful, the most complex machine ever built. And I guess it's the only one that could take you to another planet. I actually got to fly one on a second flight to the moon called Apollo 13. But that's another story.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you exit the firing room theater, please watch your step and use handrails. Also, don't forget to visit our lunar theater.
Yeah.
This is one tread? Yeah. What? And let's see what's that. Let's see what it says. It says it's a cleat that alone weighs close to 2,000 pounds. Michael Hoffman. 57 of the cleats make up the 8 belts. This is one of the cleats, and it weighs 2,000 pounds. Yeah, that's what we needed. What? For that? He shut it too. Capsule about this big.
It's a good trip, though. It's 3 days out and 3 days back. We stay there in between. Pat him on the head, had him, so mine said, wow, way to go or something. You know, we took 1/6 back.
Rocket. Once again, our next presentation in the River Theater will start in 3 minutes. Thank you.
Houston, over. Houston, Columbia, read your last clear. How many? Right, 5, Mike. I didn't go over. Let's say everything is going just swimmingly. Beautiful. Great. We're standing by for signal. Okay, it's coming on. We copy out. You know, like the colors, we're off to a good start today. AOS landing. Roger, AOS landing. Houston, Eagle, how do you read? Bye, Eagle, we're standing by for your burner report, over. Roger, the burn was on time.
As soon as the Eagle reappears, things begin to go wrong. Radio communications break down.
Eagle, Houston, did you call?
Messages to Eagle must be relayed through Mike Collins of Weather Command Module Columbia.
Eagle, it's going to be coming.
Throughout the crucial final checks, contact with the Eagle keeps dropping out.
Don't lose that data.
And Flight Director Gene Kranz inches closer to avoiding the mission.
Columbia, Houston, we lost Eagle again. Okay, we got data back. Radar flight looks good.
With the vital computer links temporarily holding, the moment of decision is now.
Okay, all flight controllers, go to go for landing. Retro, go. I don't go. Guys, go. Control, go. Falcon, go. ESP, go. Econ, go. Surgeon, go. Capcom, we're go for landing. Eagle, Houston, you're go for landing, over. I understand, go for landing. 1, 0, 10%.
Hurtling toward the moon at 3,800 miles per hour, Neil Armstrong notices his checkpoints are all appearing too soon.
Okay, we went by 3 minutes point early. We're wrong.
This means a serious navigation error.
You think you're a little bit long downrange?
At these speeds, 3 seconds long means missing the safe landing zone by 3 miles.
And Eagle, Houston, we got data dropout. Still looking good.
Suddenly, the computer starts firing the maneuvering thrusters, jolting the ship back and forth. This has happened in simulations, but never this much, never this violent. The smooth descent is becoming a bumpy ride. Before that is fixed, a problem with the onboard computer.
The 1202. 1202 alarm.
The astronauts have rehearsed for thousands of possible malfunctions, but not this one. It had been considered too unlikely. Seconds seem like hours as everyone struggles to remember the meaning of a 1202 program alarm. The deadline to safely aboard is vanishing fast.
Give us a reading on the 1202 program alarm.
1202 means the Eagle's onboard computer is overloaded. This means Houston is blind, unable to make navigation corrections or interpret the data coming from Eagle's computer. Armstrong and Aldrin are on their own. Mission Control decides they can go ahead.
We're going, Houston, we're going that alarm.
If the data link doesn't fail again.
We got you. We're going that alarm.
1,000 feet, and Neil Armstrong can see that the computer is proposing to put them down in a dangerous place. That landing site is full of boulders. If they land there, they will never take off again.
Bravo 1. Bravo 1. Okay, we're going.
At 350 feet, Armstrong ignores his computer navigation and veers away from the rocky landing site with no time to explain to Mission Control.
Okay, all flight control, everything tight.
In Mission Control, everybody is stunned. At 300 feet, the Eagle has left its flight plan and taken off at full speed across the face of the moon.
Eagle Houston is descent to fuel. Monitor over.
90 seconds of fuel remaining. Now less than 200 feet, and the Eagle is too low to safely abort back into orbit. They call this part of the flight plan Dead Man's Curve.
No level, no level.
All that's left for Mission Control is to read off the fuel remaining in seconds.
60 seconds. 60 seconds.
The entire moon landing has come down to 2 men and 1 minute.
Forward. Forward. 40 feet down, 2.5. Down to 30. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Lights on. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward. 60, 2.5 down. Big shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward, drift to the right now. Down a half. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. Good, shut down. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
A short time later, history is made again.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
For one incredible moment, we are one people with one history, watching our destiny unfold.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Armstrong is on the moon. Neil Armstrong, 38-year-old American.
It was a moment shared by an entire world.
Here, man, from the planet Earth, first set foot upon the moon, became a being for all mankind.
With these first steps, mankind stood on the highest ground, and we saw our planet as our home port in the endless ocean of space.
There was something which was surprising to me. That occurred as I was standing on the surface. Just after we had landed, I'd gone down, standing on the surface and looking at planet Earth for the first time. Seeing the beauty, seeing the finiteness of it, the limits of it, realizing what a shame it was that people were confronting each other on that planet without realizing what it was doing to the planet. It was a very emotional moment for me. I actually shed a couple of tears. Something totally unexpected for an engineer and fighter pilot to be crying quietly up there on the moon.
Mankind had achieved a tenuous foothold in the heavens, and a new and exciting world lay waiting to be explored. The first mission had stayed for only 1 day, but over the next 3.5 years, 5 more Apollo missions visited the moon, and with each one, we stayed longer, roamed further, and discovered more.
I never thought when I was a kid building rockets, in high school, that we would go to the moon, before the end of the century. I mean, I thought that was something that was way in the future, fantasy.
I was rolling on the moon one day. In a very month of December, May. Look at the size of that rock. That is the best example we got. Just don't stub your toe.
We have got to understand that as a people, we need to stretch. We need to reach beyond our grasp. We need to strive to do things that seem impossible, because in the accomplishment of them, we move society forward.
Boy, the beauty of this place is just absolutely incredible.
One
one of the astronauts has said, those hills that we climbed give our children and grandchildren a different perspective, that they see the mountains that we couldn't see. And so what we considered impossible, they're dreaming about.
3, 2, 1. What a ride, what a ride.
When I have a chance to talk to kids, I tell them the first thing I tell them is to take the word impossible out of their vocabulary. Go to their teacher tomorrow morning and scratch it out in the dictionary. The word doesn't exist. If I can stand here and tell you that I lived on the moon, that I called the moon my home for 3 days, you tell me what is impossible in this day and age, much less in a generation that follows, much less into the 21st century. Nothing is impossible.
I like exploring things, inventing, and I would like to go up there and find out what's really up there.
I would like to be an astronaut. I'd like to be on a shuttle.
Build a shuttle.
Design rockets.
Payload specialist.
I'd be a ground control officer. The thing that my mom can't understand is I'm terrified of heights, but I want to be an astronaut.
There's so many things I'd love to do. I would explore, I'd look for everything. I would try to start a farm.
Find alternate energy sources.
You may be able to cure certain diseases.
I want to walk on Mars and dance on it. Play basketball, but you could still be short. Because then you could like fly up in the air. Baseball would be awesome. Hit the ball, you get a home run every time.
There are a lot of things that can benefit mankind that we, because of science, we simply cannot do on Earth.
It's such a big universe, and it's kind of strange to think that just this one tiny little planet was chosen to have life on it.
I hear they're finding new planets or moons, and we're finding out more about how stars are working, and it makes me feel like it's trying to tell me something.
What's it trying to tell you?
That you belong up there with them.
The Apollo program ended in December of 1972, but our journey into space is just beginning. I'm Neil Armstrong. The future of space travel is being written right now, dreams and imaginations of the new generation. Perhaps that's the greatest legacy of Apollo. It shows our children and grandchildren courage, imagination, will to explore. No dream is impossible.
On behalf of NASA and the Kennedy Space Center, thank you for visiting with us today at the Apollo Saturn V Center.
NASA has initiated a series of missions to Mars and their planet using small robotic vehicles similar to the ones that are being demonstrated here. These rovers will travel the Martian terrain, gather samples, and conducting a variety of scientific investigations. The rover missions to Mars will help pave the way for the human exploration of the planet. You may recall the time of the Mars rover from on the podium here for Mars Day. We do ask as a courtesy to those who are waiting and to please limit your piloting time and let the instructions read on the top of your
chairs for this one because this was only used in very low gravity. You guys are 3 or 4 days or whatever they spend down there? These two. That's the first one.
Kyle.
Oh, this is a track.
In the top center of your picture, you can see a rectangular object that's part of the SOLCON experiment. SOLCON experiment is measuring the sun's solar constant.
How does that spacecraft suck all that energy out of it?
If anybody can correct me on anything I say, please feel free to speak up, because I'm always learning on this. I don't know what's inside the center tank to drive it. I do know that you have turbo pumps that are here on the center tank looking down. And then after the camera did about 20 minutes of filming, so the shuttle's up and gone, the center tank is good. This deck is falling back to the Indian Ocean. It's
bridge goes in, this is going into the space shuttle, see? Now we're on the inside. That's the payload. That's, what's that? This yellow one. They got a dome around that covers. It's not troposphere, it's one we're in the stratosphere. Shiny. Here, let me take your picture here. Stand up.
With no chapter name, cause an other chapter resulting in full colored blue, signifying landing is imminent.
Just a few flight controls.
Touchdown, Andrew.
Yeah.
Roger, wheel touchdown. Very much like an actual working orbiter. If you would like to tour the Kennedy Space Center,
Und nach ein Krokodil. Ja.
Ist das ein Milchkrokodil?
Guck mal, da unten hat er
Das sind die kleinen Dinger da.
Turtle, yes, you're quite right, it's a turtle. Überhaupt
Joi.
Warum habt ihr an Allogatie gesagt?
Was läuft da?
Wie rot sind die Fische?
Siehst du, wie groß er ist? Größer als Papa.
Wie groß?